Hello, it's Chastity White Rose, and today I have a sort of an interesting, topic, a sort of interesting work story time. Now, um, I've never really been sexually harassed in my life, so I'm not experienced in this type of episode. But just recently, I experienced something that could perhaps be interpreted as sexual harassment. But at the same time, it's more complicated than that, and I have mixed feelings. So I'm not going to mention this person's name. But there is a certain coworker who has repeatedly made comments about my nice ass and my tits. And this is most interesting to me. And I'm like, yes, I have been on estrogen for a long time. And yes, my body is changing in some noticeable ways. But this is the only person who's actually said something about it. Now, I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, I do value honesty. I do believe that honesty is the best policy. And so I don't think there's anything objectively wrong with pointing out a fact. At the same time, I also understand that certain things are probably not the most professional thing to say in a work environment. I understand that also. And it so happened that this coworker, one day while I was focusing on something at work, they slapped me in the butt. And I later asked them why they spanked me. And they said that they were complimenting my nice ass. And I'm like, how do I feel about this? Okay, that's creepy, but at the same time, thanks for noticing. So it's a bit creepy, but it's also terribly flattering. So I'll let it slide this time. You know what I mean? But it's an interesting situation because I do know that if I were to, I'm a biological male, but I'm a trans woman. But I also know that if I was to go and slap her ass, I would probably be accused of sexual harassment and fired. Probably. That would be taken very seriously. So why don't I report this person for sexual harassment? Because I think it may have been intended as a compliment, even if it is a bit creepy and unprofessional to behave that way at work. But at the same time, I also understand that I have no fear of a biological female because even if they do sexually harass me, they can't physically do anything to me because I am still twice as strong. So because I have no fear of this coworker, and the most damage they can do is psychological and just make me feel mildly uncomfortable, but also flattered, I think this is a unique situation, and it's the first time I've ever felt this way with this mix of feelings. So time will tell what happens in the future, but I expect I'm going to experience more and more of this because one of the things about being transgender is you are kind of a rare situation. People don't find someone like you all the time. And so I have a mix of feelings that come both from being socialized as male, but at the same time, identifying as female. I have a hard time knowing where my emotions lie and how to handle these kinds of situations because I know how I would respond if I was a true man, but I also know how I would respond if I had been born female and how I would respond. And I've thought greatly about this. But being somewhere in the middle, physically and psychologically, makes it interesting because I'm not quite sure what is the appropriate response. And I'll figure that out in time and get better at it as these situations arise with other people in other settings as well. Because it's going to happen again. It's not just one person, because people in general are rude in our society. So it's going to happen again. And maybe next time I will handle it differently than this time, but we shall see. And you may be wondering, why do I bring this topic up at all? Well, here's the thing about it. One of the things about not just being transgender, but also being autistic, is the inability to read social situations. And I don't want to accuse somebody of being rude if they, in their heart, they do have good intentions and they just really mean something as a compliment. And I also don't want to dismiss something as just a compliment if it is in fact rude and it is sexual harassment. So I'm a little bit confused on that topic. It is most confusing. But aside from that, you know what? Life is pretty good, and that's a minor issue. But I think about it a lot, and it's just one example of how, although I do not talk that much about gender identity in most of my recent videos, and most of it is computer programming related, I want you to know that, you know, the whole gender identity and also the way people behave and the way that they they look at people and act around people, especially when they are sexually attracted to somebody, makes the workplace awkward. It makes every situation awkward. And that's the thing that has to be understood, because I'm not sure how to feel about this. I'm really not. And there might be other people who have this sort of mix of feelings too. Have you ever felt offended and flattered at the same time? Have you ever been creeped out, but at the same time not bothered enough to actually say or do something about it? Because that's what I'm feeling right now. It's very mysterious, and I'm just not sure. I'm really not sure at this point what to think about that. But I'm not going to worry about it too much. But while I have it on my mind, I was just thinking of mentioning this because I feel like this is a topic that deserves to be explored more in depth in a future podcast. I'm not sure when, but at some point I would like to talk about more of the gender identity issues and how my life as a transgender person is a little bit different than other people's. It is very different. So that's all for now, and stay tuned for future updates to computer programming and also awkward situations at work.